What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another 60 feet 6 inches, your fantasy baseball home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me today from across the pond is Ben Rolfe. What's up, Ben?
Not much, Kyle. It's a bit cold over here at the moment, but that just tells me it's baseball time.
Yeah, exactly. No, when I think snow and cold and winter weather, I think baseball for sure, for sure. Yeah, no, it's we actually hit like 30 something degrees here on the West Coast, which it doesn't sound much to you. I'm sure it's snowing there, but here that's pretty cold. My car was frosted over this morning when I went to go get coffee, and it's real rough. I had to sit there for at least 5 minutes waiting for it to defrost. But we're
I
not here
feel
to.
very sorry for you.
Yeah, I know it's real rough out here. But let's talk baseball, and obviously, if you missed it, we talked the American League on all the free agency going on over there, all the trades, all the stuff. Garrett Cole, Giancarlo Stanton, D. Gordon, all that good stuff. So if you missed that, make sure you go back and check it out. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go up in the feed up there, and I think, or maybe down there, I'm not really sure. It should be around. And you can watch that. We'll also have a free agency podcast coming with the rest of the guys that are available. I'm sure as soon as we publish it, they'll sign with teams that we didn't even discuss. But you know what? That doesn't matter. Let's talk Marcel Ozuna. Let's talk about him heading to St. Louis to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. I guess new team, new ballpark. This is a guy that's been on the rise since 2016 second half. 2017 was great. What are we doing in 2018?
Well, yeah, you say on the move. You don't know anyone as nervous as me. I traded for him with you in our keeper league, our podcast keeper league, and
Yeah.
when Stanton had gone, Gordon was gone, and then everyone was talking about Yelich or Ozuna, and I'm thinking, oh no, they're going to leave Ozuna stranded leave him stranded in Miami. It was a horrible moment. I was actually getting to the point where I was thinking he might not be a keeper for me if he's the one that's stranded there. So I'm really pleased he got out. It's not really a ballpark change for him. St. Louis isn't a great hitting ballpark, but then neither was Miami, and he did okay there. It's good to see how he's grown. So he's gone from 10 home runs in 2015, 23 in 2016, up to 37 in 2017. I don't think he's gonna top that 37. I'm thinking we might see that drop back down towards 30. My projections have him at 25. That needs a tweak because that obviously takes into account the 10 home run year where he wasn't very good in terms of his power hitting. I think we're looking at a guy. I'm going to split the difference between 2016 and 2017. I know, real original to just split the difference, but I'm going to go 30 home runs. I'm going to say we see another combined 200 runs and RBIs this season. I think playing in St. Louis, batting fourth behind Carpenter and Tommy Pham, and ahead of it's who he bats ahead of that concerns me more than anything. But with Molina and Martinez and De Jong behind him, I think he can at least get the numbers there. I think we might see him similar to last year, 120 RBIs, 80 to 90 runs. That's kind of the area I see. I'm definitely interested. Again, I'm definitely going to be drafting him. I've currently ranked him in my sort of tier 5 around my sort of JD Martinez's, my AJ Pollock's, my Reese Hoskins. But I could make a case for him in the tier with Justin Upton, George Springer, Starling Marte, Ryan Braun, and KH Chris Davis. I really could. He's a guy, definitely. I think he's a bit more safe. You guys like your Steven Souzas and your Corey Dickersons who have got similar sort of power. But I don't think he's quite as safe as your Justin Uptons and your George Springers. I don't expect to see another 300-plus average. I'm thinking 280, 290 is the best we can hope for. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see 270. So all of that plays in, and I think somewhere around sort of 15, 20th outfield is going to be the right place for him.
Yeah, that seems about right. I think if depending on how your draft's going, if you need a little more stability, I think I'm with you. I think 25 to 30 homers, relatively safe average, like 200 runs and RBI. I think those projections are pretty spot on. I'm a little more pessimistic on the homer, but he's definitely got it. He's definitely got 30, 35 home run upside. So that's in the cards. And I think I'm with you. I like him. I'm not going out of my way, but it really depends. Like if Carpenter is Carpenter and he's really good and Yachty's fine, he could be really good. If Carpenter falls off and Tommy Pham isn't really the guy we were thinking of, and Yachty's injured a lot, it could be interesting. It could also get Josh Donaldson from Toronto, and all of a sudden things get crazy, and Donaldson's hitting third, and the team's kind of rejiggered. But assuming we're under this precedent and kind of what we expect, I think Ozuna's a really safe guy, a guy that I'm definitely interested in. And I'm kind of bummed I traded away. I'm not gonna lie. You got him on a nice value in that keeper league, and he's still 5-10 rounds behind his kid, whatever we expect his ADP.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the thing is with Ozuna, it's going to come down to value, because it's so hard at this time of the year to make definite statements, because I'm not even going to look at ADP data because it's ropey at this time of year. It's very heavily influenced by certain sites and certain drafts at this time of the year. You need to wait until the big guys, the CBSs, the Yahoos, the ESPNs start putting theirs out there, because they're the guys that are doing, like, that's where you're going to get the full range of how Joe Public think. People drafting at this time of year are like us, obsessives and a little bit nerdy. You get what I'm saying? They're the guys they're probably the guys in the industry. Let's be honest, the guys that are drafting now. Yeah. So you're not going to get a balanced view. So if Ozuna falls away down towards your Souzas and your Corey Dickersons, your Domingo Santana type levels, if he's being drafted around there, he's a steal. But if he's going with your George Springers, your Starling Martes, your Chris Davis, even JD Martinez, I then start to question whether or not he's a bargain at that point, or whether or not you're drafting for the numbers you expect rather than you're not drafting for the floor. That's my problem with Ozuna. He could be, depending on the value, absolutely great in draft day, but I have a horrible feeling just because he was such a big name last year and he's been a guy who's moved this offseason, he's going to be fresh on people's minds. He's going to be an overdrafted guy, and I think I'm going to find that outside of the leagues where I have him in a keepers format, I'm probably not going to own a lot of him, because I'm going to gamble on if you've listened to this podcast, Steven Souza's my darling. So I'm going to gamble on him over Ozuna if the value's right on Souza versus him.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that in redraft, as the season approaches, you're going to be able to get at a nice value. Like you said, we look at the numbers, we dig deep. I know he's moved to St. Louis, but like that lineup isn't exactly the sexiest. There's a lot, everybody's looking at the Cubs and the Yankees and and the Dodgers, and the Cardinals are just kind of go under the radar. And I think Ozuna is gonna be a guy that you can get 3 to 5 rounds later than he's probably going right about now or in the next month. As more of the regular people start getting into leagues and start looking into the names, and I think he's gonna be a guy that I could find myself owning a lot of shares of as the season approaches.
That's interesting. That's two different thoughts on his value. I personally think the name value and all of that will drive him up a little bit, but I can see your point of view. That you are right. The Cardinals not got the same air about them they had a couple of years. I can see why people might bump some of the other sort of names up that we would have behind him. But yeah, it is interesting, and the fact he doesn't steal is going to, I think, push his value down a little bit, because you guys like Santana and Souza, who do add some steals, will get a bump for that. But Ozuna's probably a better pure hitter than them.
Yep, and safety, people always take sexy over safety. It's
definitely
always. So, let's talk about my Gigantes, the San Francisco Giants. As I mentioned the other show, Damian is unfortunately not going to be with us all season long, but he will be here for spot duty. He did make fun of my Giants a lot because they had fake guys in the outfield. This year they're going to have real players. They're not going to have your Gorkys Hernandez's. You're not going to have your, Jarrett Parkers. You're going to have Andrew McCutchen. And it's actually interesting because Andrew McCutchen will be playing the right field and Hunter Pence will be moving to left. And they will be adding Evan Longoria to play third base. Ben, I guess on the whole, what did you think of these moves and kind of expectations for the Giants going into 2018?
Well, anything that saves me having to come up with projections for Steven Duggar, who I'd never heard of before this year, is a bonus.
Another fake computer generated name.
I mean, yeah, these really are out of the park, 10 years down the line type generated guys. Like it's
Yeah.
mental. Um, Gorky Hernandez still somehow is going to be in your lineup, but I think when we
Uh,
get to the free agency
yeah.
podcast, we might discuss why that get where that's going to be different. Um, I'm interested. The Evan Longoria trade, I like it because the Giants know they've got a closing window. Posey is starting to. Posey's probably on the downside of his bell
Hmm.
curve. Let's be quite honest.
Yeah.
Um, Panic isn't gonna get better than what he is. Hunter Pence isn't. I think we know what Brandon Belt is. Brandon Crawford's definitely on the downside of his career.
I gotta pump the brakes real quick. Are we gonna do the thing with Brandon Belt again, where we think he's gonna be an awesome first baseman, and then he's gonna hit like 12 home runs and hit like 260, and everyone's gonna be disappointed? Are we doing that again?
No, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna
I got
say
it. Oh,
that
thank God.
I'm
Thank
gonna
God.
say there's a period this year where Pablo Sandoval gets chosen to play at first base over
Hmm.
Brandon Belt because he slumps that badly, and that's when we might know that the Giants are heading towards a 100 loss season if that starts happening. But I think that's a long shot. But I do think that that's the trouble with Bell. I think let's stay clear of him now. I think at some point I'll get sucked in. I get sucked in every year by Brandon Belt, and at some point I will. You'll try and talk me out of it. You know better than I do. You have to suffer through him every day. I just see his
Every
stat
day.
line.
Every day.
So let's get back to Longoria. I love Longoria. He's played 156 games. 156 games last year. That's the least he's played since 2012 when he
That's
played
great.
74. And if I count back to 2009, that's 7 years he's played 150 plus games. There is no one safer at the position than Evan Longoria. He hit 36 home runs in 2016 and made us all think that he'd found some power at the end of his career that we'd never seen before, and or that we'd seen flashes of before. Last year, he came back to being a 20 home run guy. I think we see the runs and the RBI numbers come up, get close to those that my magic 200 that I look for in a combination between the two, and I think he's going to hit that what he hits. Evan Longoria is who he is. He is a safe guy. He's a guy that at third base I would be happy to have. If I'm taking the seventh, eighth, third baseman off the table, I'm happy with Evan Longoria, and I'll be happy pumping him in, knowing that San Fran is going to be San Fran. There's consistency. They've got aging guys, but we know they can do what advertised. They will put up something close to their stat lines, and
Yeah.
that's what makes me confident with Longoria.
Yeah, I guess from a real baseball perspective, I'm not super excited about these moves. I feel like we're getting a couple players that have seen their best days. They're kind of on the back end. At the same time, I am optimistic. I'm a little happier. I think there is potential where if you have Posey and Pence and Longoria and Andrew McCutchen, none of them are going to hit 40 or 50 home runs, but I think they could all hit in the neighborhood of 18 to 25. Um, and then all of
I,
a sudden, go ahead.
I feel like you've never had stars though in a real baseball thing. I feel like when you look back at the teams that have won World Series, it's not been because a couple of guys have gone manic. It's because you build teams, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's what you've built here. And from a real baseball perspective, I said I wouldn't be shocked if you won 100 games and you were in the World Series. I equally wouldn't be shocked if this just fell apart and you lost 100 games. I really
Hmm.
wouldn't. It's a really fascinating thing that they've done. I think they've managed to go all in without mortgaging the future. I don't think they've completely destroyed what you had. I think like if you struggle this year, a rebuild is not going to kill you for the next 5 to 10 years, but you're having a go, and you've got to. That is the San Francisco Giants. They're sitting
Hmm.
there, they're watching the Los Angeles Dodgers make the World Series, and they're thinking, no, we're not just going to go quietly. Come on, we can fight this. And I think your team's going to be one to watch in periods this year.
Yeah, I definitely. I think this could be interesting. I think this actually helps Buster Posey having a real lineup around him.
Mm.
I think he gets a little bit of a bump in average. I think his power numbers could look a little bit better. Obviously, he's not going to be the MVP year, but if he gets a little bit of a bump, and I know he's a guy that probably gets a little overdrafted, but if at least when you're taking him in whatever third, fourth round, you'll feel a little bit better just because of that lineup. I'm looking at the World Series odds, and they're 18 to 1 to win the World Series. So that's actually they're right behind the Cubs, and right in front of the Cardinals and the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers, or no, Diamondbacks and the Angels. So, it's pretty interesting. Obviously, Vegas thinks they can be a little better than last year, which is good. Should be good for Cueto. Should be good for Bumgarner. Obviously, we will dive deeper into the Giants in our NL West preview. Let's talk about Christian Arroyo and Denard Span going to Tampa. Are these guys that you think could be mixed league pieces? Are they AL only? I know Arroyo was actually pretty good last year when he got called up and showed more power than he ever had in AAA, or even any of the minor league stops, really. That kind of scares me a little bit. But I guess where are you at with these two guys?
I like Christian Arroyo. I think at some point during the year he will displace Adeiny Hechavarria. I think I've said that right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, nailed it.
He obviously liked Florida. He didn't want to leave, so he's moved from Miami to Tampa Bay last year. I think, the Tampa Bay is such a weird team. Like Denard Span, I like because I think he's going to bat at the top of the order. It's got Kiermaier, Souza, Dickerson, Ramos behind him, and I think he's got every possibility of having a decent season, getting a few steals. Arroyo, I think, let's be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if he was batting 7 or 8, or I still think Brad Miller is not good. So I think you might say Bad Miller, as some people call him. But it wouldn't surprise me if Arroyo ends the season the number 6 or number 7 in that lineup. And I think he's a solid investment right now in dynasty leagues, because what you may have is an owner of Christian Arroyo. I used to be one until I recently left a dynasty league that was a bit too complicated for my current life.
Oh, you finally left that league, huh?
Yeah, it was a bit too complicated for my current life, and then the rules were a bit mean. I had a hell of a farm system. I hope whoever's taken over manages it well. But Christian Arroyo, I think now's the time to go get him in Dynasty, because I think people are going to look at the fact he's going to start the season in the minors potentially, and they're going to be scared. They're going to think maybe what he flashed last year is not what he is. And that'll be the issue for him. My concern is they do have Dan Robertson there as well, who's a good middle infielder. They've got Micah Johnson. He might just get his path blocked this year, but I think very quickly his talent will win out. I think both teams have done well in that trade. I really do. And I think from a real perspective, I think they've both done good jobs. I think Denard Span will add a bit, and I think Christian Arroyo will be a future talent in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how he pans out, because obviously he was the major piece that got us Longoria. I'm hoping it's not a Carlos Beltran type situation, but we'll have to see. I am curious on Span. I think I'm with you. Like I think he's gonna be good in hitting in that lineup and lead off and do things, or he's gonna be a guy that ends up getting basically cut or traded away for peanuts and ends up becoming a 4th or 5th outfielder on a random playoff team. But we'll see. Let's talk about Carlos Santana, headed to the Philadelphia Phillies in a move that I could tell you for one I did not see coming. The Phillies were a team that's obviously starting to piece together a little bit, but they went out and made a splash, and they brought in Carlos Santana. I guess, what are we doing with the Phillies in 2018, and kind of like, I guess, how does he fit? What are your thoughts? I mean, is Carlos Santana, Rhys Hoskins, Nick Williams, Michael Franco, like, is this a lineup we have to start, like, seriously considering?
The Phillies is an interesting situation at the moment. It really is. I'm just sort of comparing the numbers between the guy we've just been talking about, Longoria, who's 32. You've got Andrew McCutchen, who we've just touched on as well, who's 31, and then we've got Carlos Santana, who's 31. They all feel very similar players. They all feel like guys who have been stars and are now on the back end of their career. But I think all of them can be really useful for fantasy. I'm saying Evan Longoria, top 10 third baseman. We're saying McCutchen, probably still going to be a top 20 outfielder. I mean, it could be a top 10, more likely to be closer to 20 than he is 10. I think what we lose in power, we'll see in durability from him playing the corner outfield and stuff like that. So it's another good guy. Santana really interests me because he got used a lot as a DH in Cleveland, as well as to sort of do that for first base. Mm-hmm. He's one of these guys who does the up and down. He went 20 home runs, 27, 19, 34, 23. So I think everything tells us it's going to be 20 to 30-ish home runs, high 20s to 30-ish home runs. My concern is durability with him, because whereas I think McCutchen is gonna do well because he's moving into a less demanding position, I think Santana is going from playing DH to playing first base every day. They've still got Tommy Joseph on their bench. Ironically, Cleveland need a first baseman, and Tommy Joseph would be the perfect trade partner. But that's a different matter. They've also got Rhys Hoskins, who I think we might find very quickly isn't a great outfielder. I'm thinking not quite Kyle Schwarber bad, but I'm thinking not a great option at left field. And I think that's going to cause some stress if Santana doesn't play well. And I think what we could see is Santana losing playing time to your Hoskins, Tommy Joseph. They're going to want to work Aaron Altherr out there. It's going to be really hard. And I do have concerns about Santana, and it stopped me ranking him any higher than 15th, really. I put him in the 6th tier with Buster Posey, Matt Carpenter, and Justin Bour. Now, that's a tier of guys that I feel like can be good if the situation works for them. But I'd rather gamble on my Rhys Hoskins. I'd rather gamble on Trey Mancini. I'd like to see if Justin Smoke in Toronto has got flashed something there. Like, that's where I am with Santana. He feels boring and safe, and that's probably unfair to him, but that's where we are with him now.
Yeah, for just a quick aside, when we went through the ages, like, if you had asked me before, I would have said Longoria and McCutchen were closer to 35, and Santana was closer to 25, but that's obvious.
Oh, really?
Yes. Maybe it's just because they've been in the landscape longer. I don't know. It's weird, but the fact that they're all the same age is pretty mind-boggling to me. I have a hard time seeing Tommy Joseph taking at-bats away from Carlos Santana. I think he's the guy that ends up somewhere else. I do think Rhys Hoskins can see a little time at first if they want to give Santana a day off, but I don't know.
My concern for Santana is he can have some slumps, and Tommy Joseph can have hot patches, and if they coincide, we've got issues. Am I drafting Carlos Santana and his 20 to 25 guaranteed home runs, or am I gambling on Josh Bell? Am I gambling on even if you like him, someone like Matt Olson, for example? Am I gambling on the fact that there could be 30, 35, 40 home runs in Olson, or am I gambling that Bell could show a 30-plus home run power? That's my trouble with Santana. What you have to remember with Santana is his progress to the majors was stunted by the fact he was a catcher. That always slows things down, which is perhaps why you think of him as being younger.
Yeah,
it's definitely going to be interesting. I feel like at times it's going to be frustrating, but I think first base, corner infield, where you're going to be playing Santana is probably corner infield. He's deep enough that you should draft him, but just beware on draft day that his name from people still remember Carlos Santana as this great draft day bargain because he was catcher eligible all those years ago. Just remember his name value will drag him up a little bit. Philly is a bit of a sexy team at the moment, and I think he will end up being overdrafted for where I'm happy, but it's a safe option.
Philly is just on the rise, man. The Eagles are playing to go to the Super Bowl. The Sixers got Joel Embiid. They're trusting the process. The Phillies, the Flyers are playing well. It's just that city, man. Good for them.
It's funny how these cities go round. It wasn't that long ago that you had Boston down in the dumps, and then all of a sudden, all of them rose.
Like 15 years ago, and then they won every championship from the last 12 years.
Yeah, but would it surprise you if in 15 years' time we're saying that Philly have won every championship? It really wouldn't. They've really, that city has endured a lot of things, and I hope for their sake this is a good team. I enjoy watching the Phillies. The Phillies were one of my tied franchises in that dynasty league I've just left, so I know a lot about this team, and I'm very interested to see what they do. I'd have liked to see Tommy Joseph given another go this year. I think what we'd seen from him in the past was good. But I like the move to go and get Carlos Santana. And the great thing is Carlos Santana has the name value that if they do need to move him because things do go a little bit south this season and they want to give up on that, he could bring back some interesting pieces for him. So it's a good gamble from Philly. And I think him in that lineup, it's just going to be, can Cesar Hernandez and Odubel Herrera do enough in front of him to give him enough RBIs? Can Rhys Hoskins hit like he did? If Michael Franco bounces back, now that's a hell of a lineup.
Yeah, we'll talk more Phillies, but Michael Franco's the guy that makes me scratch my head. I can't wait for our NL East preview. Speaking of the NL East, let's talk about our guy Damian's New York Mets, who, whenever there's an old man who they can pencil in with, they used to have star power, they got to do it. Locked up Jay Bruce, locked up Adrian Gonzalez. I guess just talk to me about the Mets. Jay Bruce, are we in on this guy? He was actually pretty dang good last year, surprisingly. Obviously, Cespedes is still there helping out that whole lineup, but what are we doing with Bruce? Is he a guy you're going to be drafting?
Yeah, I think he's interesting, definitely. I think he can still be your 30 home run hitter, and I know that's not the same thing it was, but he's not doing it at the 220 average that he was doing it with the Reds. I'm hoping he can find a home in the Mets this year and feel secure, can put up another 100 RBI season. It's interesting because it's not a great lineup around him. Get Conforto back in there midway through the year. Just on a side note, at some point they could be trotting out Jay Bruce, Adrian Gonzalez, and David Wright. I mean, like the mid-2000s are calling.
Oh, God. That would be so amazing.
I know. I can't wait to see Damian's reaction on Twitter, but that's a side note. I think Jay Bruce can still be a decent power hitter. I think we can see the guy that's hit 250 the last 2 years. Even if he slumps back into that 240 kind of range, it wouldn't be the end of the world. He's going to be a guy that I will definitely draft, but it's got to be at the right value. I mean, I'd rather gamble on like Mazzara and Puig maybe, because I'd like that upside, and I'd rather gamble on guys that can give me a little bit of speed power combination in Kiermaier. But when you're talking guys that, I don't know, let's say if you need power, you're going to take him over probably Kiermaier. You're probably going to go over like your Adam Eatons, your Odubel Herreras. These are all guys that are in the same ballpark. Your Avi Garcias, your Nick Castellanoses. I went relatively low with Jay Bruce. I feel like that was because as I was doing these rankings, I was reacting to this.
Yeah.
There's guys like Corey Dickerson who I can see 40 home runs for. There are guys like Jay Bruce who I know 35 home runs is what we're getting from him, and it's not going to be more than that. And that obviously stunts what you can expect from him. What concerns me is if we go back to your 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, we saw 280, 250, 250, 260. Then we saw 2 years of 217 and 226. Now we're back to 250. What happens if it does fall off again? That's my risk with Jay Bruce. If it does collapse, it's going to be a calamity, and that's why I don't want to invest too much. If the value's right, Jay Bruce's power is going to be a great thing in the middle of drafts. If you've gone heavy on speed, maybe, or you've gone for 30 home run guys instead of the 40s and the 50s early on, Jay Bruce can catch you back up quite quickly. But equally, he's a guy I'm not going to be too invested in. I'm aware of the flaws in this lineup. I'm aware of the just random flaws that the Mets seem to have at times, and that's what I'm going to react to.
Yeah, that seems very fair. I think he's a guy that, like we were talking about Ozuna earlier. If you're looking for safety in that range, I think he's a guy that'll make a lot of sense. If you got a little more risky and you want to pencil in the numbers and feel good about it, I think Bruce is fine. I think if you have the safety, you like where your team's at, you want to take a little more upside, then you talk about some of the other guys you mentioned. Adam Eaton is a guy that's really interesting to me, and I think when we talk Nationals will be a big conversation for us because I think there's a lot to break down there.
I think the NL East could be a 3-hour podcast.
Maybe
at
we'll
this rate,
take each team and break it down.
One thing that is interesting, just quickly before we move away to Adrian Gonzalez, Jay Bruce could gain first base eligibility. There is a chance that when they sit Gonzalez, it's Bruce that moves in there and they flex with the outfield. And if he does, I like that for Jay Bruce. If he does gain that eligibility, I could easily see him slotting in where we were talking about that Carlos Santana, Greg Bird kind of level. I'd probably even go a little bit higher than that because I think he's got the upside that like Justin Smoke showed. He's got Josh Bell kind of upside with the power that he can put enough power out there that if he's first base eligible in your leagues, I can see him moving up draft board just because that flexibility, first base outfield is good, and there is that power there.
Yep. I think I'm right there with you. Speaking of Adrian Gonzalez, this is a guy that we saw battle injuries all year last year. A guy that I was in on and I thought would actually have a nice season, and I was way wrong on that, and I will take my crow. But now we're heading into this year. I mean, I don't know. Like, this could easily be a designated for assignment guy or a cut before the season even starts. I don't know that he's the guy that I'll be drafting, maybe keeping an eye on, and if he starts hitting well early in the season, maybe he's a guy that I stick on one of my waiver claims, but I don't know. Where are you at with him?
It's so hard, isn't it? Because this is a guy that just fell off a cliff. I mean, he was never early in his career was a monster power guy, but let's say in recent history he wasn't a big power guy. 22, 27, 28 home runs, and then 18 and 3. Like, I feel like something must have been wrong there, either mentally or physically. And if he's got that back, then he could get back to that 20 home run range. But I can equally see what you're saying in that right now they've projected him to platoon with, I'm going to guess it's Gavin Cecchini. Like, that's not exactly filling me with confidence in that they believe in him. But if he hits well, they will keep him out there because what else? Like, I don't also see Gavin Cecchini being the first baseman of the future. So I don't see them just giving up on him. Now, when Dominic Smith comes up, that might make the difference here. I'm not drafting Gonzalez. I feel like both me and you were in on him last year, and I feel like Damien called us stupid a million times. So the irony that he's now on the Mets makes me really happy. But that's because I'm a sadist, and I as much as I support the Texas Rangers, I don't really have a fan interest in baseball, so it's very hard for anybody to get back at me on that one. So it's quite nice for me to just take shots at you two all year. It's wonderful. Gonzalez, we're going to talk about him at some point this year. I feel like at some point this year he's going to go on a little string of home runs, and we're going to say, is Gonzalez back? Should we pick him up? Should we put him in our lineup? But ultimately, I think the answer is going to be no, and for that reason, I think we should just move on.
Yeah, I honestly think he's a guy that either doesn't make the team out of camp because Dominic Smith is raking, or is a guy that if they're playing their timing and they want to make sure they get enough service time and all that stuff, Gonzalez, and they cobble it together for 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever it is. Then they end up cutting Gonzalez and bringing up Dominic Smith, and he's a guy in the Josh Bell that we were talking about earlier that comes in and is really good, and maybe even has a I don't want to say Cody Bellinger type season, but comes up and makes a real impact and becomes a guy that fantasy owners not only want but are coveting and trading for and all that good stuff. So I think he's the name that if you're able to grab him late in your drafts, I think if you can afford to sit on him, you'll be very happy that you did. I'm going to throw out a few more names, Ben. I want you to just tell me who's most interesting to you. Howie Kendrick to the Nationals, Matt Adams to the Nationals, Tyler Chatwood to the Cubs, and Wade Davis to the Rockies.
One by one, quick sentence. Howie Kendrick and Matt Adams, if they can get full playing time, if Murphy or Rendon get injured, I can see him having fantasy value. Adams, similar. Ryan Zimmerman, definitely been up and down the last few years. Adams could be a good guy to step in there. Tyler Chatwood did well in Colorado, and anybody that can do well in Colorado, I think, can do well elsewhere. So I'm definitely interested to see how he does for the Cubs. Wade Davis to the Rockies scares the bejesus out of me. We've seen relievers go there and struggle, and I wouldn't be surprised if Wade Davis is, but he's a power guy first of all, like an overwhelming speed kind of guy at times. So maybe that benefits him rather than a breaking ball type guy. But I'm not confident about any of these three. I'm not sure I'll own any of them. If it's any, it's Tyler Chatwood.
Chatwood is the guy that interests me a lot, and I think he's a guy that in that Cubs team on that rotation, he won't have to be the ace. There's a good chance that Arrieta's just gone, and we'll talk about him in our free agency pod. But if he's your third or your fourth starter, I think obviously it's a huge upgrade in terms of park. We talked about Colorado. I think Chatwood's a good pitcher. I think he's got a chance to be a better pitcher, And, he's a guy that I'm going to be grabbing in a lot of deeper leagues, a lot of NL only, and even some standard mix, just because I think the potential is there for him to be one of those guys that, kind of breaks into that, oh, he's actually a top 35 to top 50 starter, and nobody really saw it coming. And he's a guy kind of like what Gio Gonzalez did last year, where he was basically undrafted or drafted super late in a lot of leagues. And then all of a sudden he comes on and he's back to his old ways. I think Chapman could have a similar type season.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you can't evaluate a pitcher who's spent the last 5-6 years in Colorado. You just can't. I think it's all going to depend. He's definitely a guy worth drafting. If the value's right, I'm going to have him in every league. If people get carried away with him because he's a Cub, then I'll be okay to pass on him. But I think he's a guy that at some point this year gets hot, and we really talk about him as a serious upside pitcher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I'm with you on Wade Davis too. Like I think he's a good pitcher. I think he's got a lot of talent. But it's just, man, it's really hard to trust a guy in Colorado. And Wade Davis has been really good the past couple of years, so he'll probably go sooner than I'm comfortable grabbing.
Yeah.
If he kind of falls into the range where I'm ready to grab a few closers and take shots, like I don't mind taking a shot on him, but I just feel like someone will be more comfortable taking him before I'm ready to say, yeah, give me him.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be one guy who at least you feel like will be relatively safe in his job. I don't know the Colorado Rockies bullpen off the top of my head, but we've seen Jake McGee, Adam Ottavino struggle enough to know that Wade Davis is going to get the first, second, and third shot at that job, you feel, and that's worth something, and this Colorado team's going to be good enough. But I also feel like this is a Colorado team who could lose games 10-0 and win games 10-0. That's how I feel like they could be. They don't feel like a team that's going to have lots of squeaky bum time save kind of games like that. Yeah. That's my concern with Wade Davis. I think his numbers are going to regress a little, and I don't think he's going to get a huge amount of saves. But I can see it.
Yeah, I mean their bullpen. If you look at it, like it's pretty solid. And if it was like this was Tampa's bullpen or this was a team that doesn't play in Colorado's bullpen, like Wade Davis, Jake McGee, Brian Shaw, Adam Ottavino, Mike Dunn, like that's a pretty reliable bullpen that if they're in closer games they can do it. But I think I'm with you, especially when they're in Colorado. Man, it's just so scary.
And like I said, they're all good, but they're not. But what makes Wade Davis an option, whereas maybe he wouldn't be otherwise, is just the fact that we've seen some of them have shots in the past and fall down, and I think it means that they're going to stick with Wade Davis longer than they might stick with others.
Yeah, no, totally agree. It's not like we're talking about Jake McGee or Adam Ottavino. All right, Ben, this was the National League. Like I said, if you missed it, go back and watch the American League. We will also be recording a free agency podcast that we will be doing very, very soon, talking some JD Martinez, talking some Royals, talking some other big names. Make sure you are checking out fakepigskin.com. Ben's got a ton of early season rankings to get you kind of get the ball rolling, get your head in the right space. He's also got them tiered out, which I think helps a lot. And then we'll have all kinds of content coming your way between now and the draft time and all season long. So for Ben Rolfe, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.